uh, talking about risk yet. Many define risk as volatility or standard deviation, but you suggest something more profound. How do you explain the true nature of risk, especially to those trained to see it more as mere numbers? And is risk truly quantifiable, or do we just convince ourselves it is?
Well, it's funny that you should ask the question that way, because one of my favorite inspirations on this subject is a memo that was written by Peter Bernstein, who was one of the great investment philosophers, maybe the greatest ever, in my opinion, around 2009. And the title was, Can We Reduce Risk to a Number? And the punchline is, I don't believe so. And my memo, Risk Revisited Again, was actually revised again to incorporate a lot of messages from Bernstein. This business of the number is very significant. You know, I learned about risk for the first time when I went to the University of Chicago for an MBA in 67-69. And the Chicago theory had recently been developed there around 64. It was brand new. I was among the first classes to learn it, which was a great advantage. And it was really, more than any other one thing, I think, a methodical way to contrast potential return with risk to see if the risk is well compensated, or past performance with return to see if how good a job the manager did, how much risk they took to get the returns they got. So it was a mechanical, methodical, mathematical approach. What does that mean? It means it required a number for risk. You can't do formulas and calculations involving risk if you don't have a number for risk. So they settled on volatility, or the standard deviation of price or return, for a very simple reason. There are no others. If you don't use volatility, what are you going to use? How can you assess the risk of a proposition, either one you're considering? How can you reduce that to a number? Or even the risks you took in the past. How can you quantify how much risk you took if you don't use volatility? So they accepted volatility. I assume they did it, their thought process was like I just described, but I don't think volatility is risk. You know, what is volatility? We're not talking about the riskiness of the underlying enterprise. We're talking about the day-to-day fluctuations in the price. Is that a risk to an investor? I don't feel it is. When I buy an investment, I don't care if it goes up or down the next day, or whether in the next 100 days it goes up and down a lot or a little. I care about where we end up. You know, Buffett always puts these things best. He said, I'd rather have a lumpy 15 than a smooth 12. And people who prefer a smooth 12 over a lumpy 15 must either be what we call nervous Nellies, or be operating in an environment where they can be criticized, or some other bad development, you know? They must have a boss or a client or a board or something like that who's going to have an adverse reaction if things are up and down, mostly down. That's not me. I only care where we come out. And, you know, I think that the investment business is enormously preoccupied with short-term events. And I'll go through periods of time like 2015, 16, 17. I got one question every meeting. What month will the Fed start raising rates? And I used to say, why do you care? What difference does it make? If I tell you they're going to raise rates in May, what are you going to do about it? And if I call you back and say, no, not May, August, what are you going to do different? But people feel they have to ask these questions because they feel it's professional and responsible to understand what's going to happen, even if they can't have knowledge. You know, what good is it to have to spend all your time ferreting out forecasts that have no special probability of being right? Anyway, these are not the things that matter, these short-term events. And as I told my clients, as I wrote in a memo called What Really Matters, what matters is whether we invest in companies that grow and lend money to companies that pay us back. That's all that matters. And, you know, whether the Fed raises rates in March or May or August, or whether the stock is up or down 2% tomorrow, it does matter. So it's a matter of focus. And our focus is on fundamentals, not market behavior. I wrote a memo called On the Couch, because I think every once in a while the market needs a trip to the shrink. And I followed that up maybe the week later. People were reacting very strongly to what was going on in the market. So I wrote a memo called What Does the Market Know? I don't think the market knows that much. I don't take my instructions from the market. Because the market doesn't focus on fundamentals, I do.
Great, great.